It's really important to make sure that you are looking at the data, and B, make sure you're looking at the right data too.
And we're talking a lot about data today, so welcome to episode 3 of the 8 Group podcast, From Brief to Broadcast. Really looking forward to this one. Joined today by a partner of ours, a partner of mine in work, also a friend.
My name's Graham Tomblin, I'm from PDV. For those that don't know me, my job in life is to use data to help brands and agencies acquire more customers. That's the principle. All sorts of problems they come to us with, and we use data to solve them.
So really excited to have you on, Graham, and to talk around data, the importance of data to marketing campaigns, what to look out for.
A lot of businesses, surprisingly still, make massive assumptions about who their customers are. They think they're better off and think they're a bit younger than they really are.
Hello, welcome to episode 3 of the 8 Group podcast, From Brief to Broadcast. It's my second episode, so starting to get into the swing of it now. Really looking forward to this one. Joined today by a partner of ours, a partner of mine in work, also a friend in Graham from PDV. And we're talking a lot about data today, so something that I find fascinating. Going to my disc profiling is that red and yellow. So I'm red, I'm decisive, and I'm full of ideas and influence. What I'm not is blue and green. So anyone who doesn't know about disc profiling, blue and green is slow and steady, is stability, and is detail and accuracy, which is where data falls. So my natural position would not be to be excited by data, but in the world of marketing, it fascinates me. So really excited to have you on, Graham, and to talk around data, the importance of data to marketing campaigns, what to look out for. You're the expert, so yeah. So let's dive in first with a bit about you, Graham. So what makes you tick? Who are you outside of work? And how did you fall into data?
Goodness, well, thank you for having me. My name's Graham Tomlin, I'm from PDV. For those that don't know me, my job in life is to use data to help brands and agencies acquire more customers. That's the principle. So they've all sorts of problems they come to us with, and we use data to solve them. So who am I outside of work?
Firstly, can we start with the fact that you're a Manchester United fan? And if we hadn't have just won 2 games against Manchester City and Arsenal, we wouldn't have mentioned it. But as we're both Manchester United fans, I think we should probably mention it.
I have to say, being a Man United fan has been an exercise in emotional resilience for the last 10 years. So part of that is about not getting too carried away when things go well. But 2
Agreed.
fabulous results in a row has just made me extremely happy. And I had a very sore throat yesterday after all the screaming at the telly.
Yeah, as did I.
But yes, emotional resilience, and I think that comes with age as well. So it's quite useful being an old Man United fan. But I'm also into lots of really boring stuff, long country walks, jumping on my motorbike whenever I can, my friends, my family. Death metal, that's it. That's me in a nutshell, I think. Just the same as everybody else, really.
Maybe not the death metal bit, and that's probably a slight niche, but there you go. And also, you've written a cookbook, which fascinated me. I love that. There's a story behind it, isn't there? And you've just had it published, but I think that's great. I love cooking, and I love the idea of what you've done.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I've been cooking all my life. My mum bought me a book when I was young, I should say, when I first left home. Prue Leith and Caroline Waldegrave, their cookery Bible, and it's what I use to learn how to cook, really. I wanted to do something similar, whereas my boys grew up. One of them just moved out last week, which was bittersweet, let's say. But now he keeps sending me photographs of all the things he's cooking from the book that I wrote. So I just put all my own recipes down, and he can have stuff that he's grown up with all his life.
Brilliant idea, absolutely brilliant. I think it's one of those. I can't remember how I got into cooking, but we've had conversations about this before, haven't we? I find it relaxing. I think you either love cooking or you do it because you have to survive. So no, it's good. And I think if you can teach kids younger, and mine are 6 and 9, so it's too young for them.
And the book is available for sale. So if anybody wants to know the details, just give me a shout and I'll send them a link.
Brilliant. So data then, like I said before, it's not my natural strength to be excited by data, but I remember early in my career, I started off as an account manager, booking in print, and then moved into sales, selling print. And it was very commodity based because that's all I knew. And I remember the first couple of times that data came into a conversation, and I remember being really intrigued early on. I remember the customers that I was dealing with kind of saying, we can't give you the print files yet because we don't know the volume, because we're working on the data. And I started asking questions, and it's, well, what do you need to know on the data? And it's, well, we're waiting for results from the last campaign. And I remember just going down this rabbit hole of why it's so important, and actually it drives every output, whether that's print, whether that's email. It's the start and end of every campaign, and it's the reason why we do what we do. So back then it was printing brochures or leaflets, but all of that came from a decision around data. So like I say, not really my natural comfort zone, but I'm fascinated by it. And we've had so many conversations over beers and red wines about why data is so important. So it's why I wanted to get you on. I just think, did people know different amounts about data, especially in marketing manager or marketing director roles? Some people just pull data or guess. Let's be honest, there's still people out there that say, we know these people are probably going to get this piece and they're going to be excited by it. They might respond. And then there's people that at the other end of the scale have fantastic CRMs, really dive into their data and send much more relevant pieces to a smaller audience. So what got you into data? Why did you decide? Did you fall into it, or was it a decision that you made?
It was planned, really. I fell into marketing by getting a job at the Daily Telegraph. I'm just going to say in the last century. It was there where I heard about direct marketing, and at first it was terribly confusing. But as I began to figure it out, I realised it was something that would appeal to both my creative side, which is buried in there somewhere, but also my data geeky side, which is quite obvious to everybody. So from there, I went on to Reed Elsevier, but then from there, very quickly, I went on to ICD, which became Experian. And that's where I really started to learn about data and what you can do with it and what it means to people. So some old people, Tash Whitney and David Morton, they taught me all the stuff that I know, and these names may not mean anything to you, but they're just here for old people like me. And then Clive Holt-Bailey after that. Just a bunch of people that just got me really excited about what you can do with data and how you can play with it to get the outcomes that you want. So that's the thing that's kept me excited. You always have a hypothesis as to how a campaign is going to perform based on the data and the combination of that and the creatives and all the other things, and then it doesn't do what you expect it to do. So you have to learn something from it. So as a sort of general principle, all through your life, you're just learning, and that's why it's fun.
Yeah, and I think you touched on a really good point there in that it doesn't always do what you think it will. And it's easy to make assumptions. And I think that's why some people don't dive into it deep enough. They assume they know the outcome before they've looked at the data. And we've both, again, something we've spoken about, we've seen so many examples where we would both agree what the outcome should be. And it's completely different. Data doesn't lie, right? Data's factual. By the very nature of what it is, it's factual. So you can assume what you like, but actually the data will tell you the truth. And that will change over time. And again, things like COVID completely change how people behave. And so if you only went on assumptions, you would probably assume, people are at home more, which they are. That will mean that they will respond better to direct mail, which they might. But actually, the data might tell you something completely different, or you're not aware of something that's changed in a certain demographic of people. And the data will highlight that to you. So it's fascinating. But do you find, like I touched on earlier, there are brands that, in my opinion, make too many assumptions still, and they're getting results. So that the campaign might wash its face, right? It's paying for itself and returning an investment, putting on the investments. What do you think happens when brands do skip deep diving into data or selecting the data accurately, other than missing the obvious that there's probably more of a return to be had?
I mean, it's such an important part of what you have got to know to be able to run your business, which is who your customers are and who they're likely to be. And a lot of businesses, surprisingly still, make massive assumptions about who their customers are. Invariably, they think they're better off and invariably think they're a bit younger than they really are. And that can expose them to risks, not just in the sense of one campaign not performing terribly well, but also in terms of their business strategy. And so it's really important to, A, make sure that you are looking at the data, and B, make sure you're looking at the right data too. So we had a client that did a direct mail campaign where they were trying to promote a collection of clothing that was younger. It was meant to be for a younger audience than the one that they traditionally reached out to. And then they looked at some data and it told them that they had in fact achieved a slightly younger audience. So they were extremely happy with it. But they'd used modelled data and they hadn't used actual data. So the model was just people in this postcode are likely to be of this certain age. Actually, when we got hold of the data and we appended real dates of birth to it, we understood that it wasn't in fact the case, and they were selling the same stuff to the same people they'd always been selling to. I mean, the campaign washed its face, but it didn't achieve the objective that they wanted to achieve, which was to try and find a slightly younger audience. So these things are the things that are really important. Make sure you understand what you want to achieve with any given campaign, and then make sure you're using the right data to achieve it.
I think there's also got the element of flexibility as well. Another example I'll give from a real world situation is I dealt with a sports company. I do a lot of running, and they assumed their demographic, exactly what you've just said, was younger than it actually is. And when we did the data profiling, which we'll touch on what that is later on, two things came out that were really important. So we were planning a direct mail campaign, but actually we did the data profiling that their audience were older than they thought. So they were kind of thinking 25 to 35, and it was more 35 to 45, 50. Yeah. But also it came out that a lot of their customers were buying wine online. Not saying there's a correlation there, but I like red wine and I like running, so I kind of get the logic there. Actually, the end of the conversation was, direct mail is probably not what you need to be doing right now. You need to be looking at parcel inserts in online wine companies, because you're going to target a lot of potential new customers of the right demographic that are buying wine that also are probably into running. So it completely changed not just the demographic they were targeting, but also actually the output. They were going to do a direct mail campaign, and a parcel insert was the answer. But it all starts with that data conversation. And it's so, you'll agree with me here, I know you will, it's so easy to have a plan before you've looked at the data, and then it's really hard to deviate from a plan that you've had signed off maybe at a senior level, or the budget's been signed off. And to undo that, when you then start talking about data, it's too late.
Yep. Yeah, it is. Always start with the hypothesis first, and then look at the data next, and that's the way to do it. It's never a good idea to base your campaigns on assumptions, or at least sometimes people carry it off, and that's the trouble. I think people make an assumption and it works out just fine, and so they think they know everything.
That's a really good point. Another one then. So in my experience from a salesperson background, one of the obstructions I come across is people not having a great CRM, or not having access to what they class as great data, or it's hard work, which then results in two things. Either they back away and say, I can't really give you what you're asking for to make this campaign fantastic, or even worse, they give you data that they're not confident with and you're not confident with. How important, well, two questions here. How important is it to use clean data, and what is clean data? And is it more of a risk to use not unclean data you're not confident with? Would you be better off not using it, and could it get you into trouble?
Trouble's the right word for it there, I think. Yes. So we just, again, another example of a client who they were in a scale-up phase. So they were madly trying to acquire customers and hadn't quite got all their bits and pieces in a row yet. And we meet a lot of businesses like that. And they were managing their suppression files on Excel spreadsheets, and they had numerous Excel spreadsheets with all of their suppressions on them. So when it came to running a campaign, they were running the risk of mailing people that had asked specifically not to be mailed, and because they might not supply all the Excel spreadsheets when they were meant to. Telling you this adds a bitter experience. So as a consequence, they put themselves at a great deal of risk. Not only a risk of upsetting people, which you don't really want to do when you're putting your brand in front of people, but also they're running a regulatory risk of GDPR fines and such like. So good handle on both internal data that you're going to use and external data is absolutely crucial. And then, so there've been other businesses where they've had a cursory glance at how data has been collected and believe it's useful for what they use it for, and then have allowed their supplier to go off and do the campaigns for them. So this is not about their own internal data, it's external data. But again, if that data isn't up to snuff, then they run the risk of regulatory fines. And there's been a few PECA fines for improper consent on email broadcasting, for instance. And it's a big risk, both regulatory and reputationally. So it's got to be got in order. There's lots of ways of making sure that your data is clean and fit for purpose. And one of those is having a robust due diligence process in place when you're looking at data suppliers. And the other is about having a DPO and IT department that thinks of privacy first when they're building the solutions for the business to run. And there can be slightly terrifying conversations internally. Our DPO sits about 5 feet away from my desk and hears everything I say to every client. So we're on the leash, to be fair. But that's a good thing. And sometimes it seems like it's a slightly difficult thing to deal with. But the reality is it's the way forward to get the campaign results that you want. Otherwise you'll end. Nobody wants a GDPR fine against their name on their CV.
No, they don't. And GDPR was the next thing I was going to touch on, actually. And this is more giving you the kind of platform to explain more on acquisition side. So data, right? You've got two main uses. You're either targeting existing customers, maybe lapsed customers, data you already hold, whether that's live or, like I say, lapse. The other one is acquisition. So you're profiling, which we'll go on to in a minute, and looking at your best fit customers and then acquiring data of like-for-like customers that are more than likely going to be a potential customer. That, for me, again, going back from my experience dealing with marketing people, the moment you mention GDPR, legitimate interest is the phrase that comes up. And again, I think that's evolved over time. When GDPR became a thing, legitimate interest was kind of bandied around as I'm not going to say get out, that's the wrong phrase, but not even loophole, the one you can use to justify what you're doing. I think it's great to hear from someone like you that is a data expert. That's not something that I claim to be in any way, shape or form. Legitimate interest and data acquisition and GDPR. Just talk around that, because I think for me, that stops a lot of people doing acquisition activity. They just start to go down a bit of a rabbit hole of, I could get in trouble here. And even though I think I'm ticking the legitimate interest box because I'm targeting potential customers that would like my product, I'm still not 100% sure, therefore I'm nervous. And then that drags on for a little bit and they go, let's just not do acquisition.
Yeah, you're so right. And different sectors have different viewpoints on this as well. So the charity sector got somewhat hammered by it. So they tend to be a lot more nervous, even though the charity world is the world that started off direct mail as an acquisition source. Alongside retail marketing all those many years ago. So you're right, it's challenging. The GDPR came in 2016 and people started having to comply with it from 2018 onwards. And legitimate interest was one of the then six lawful bases that you're allowed to rely upon to process data. And I think at the time everybody assumed consent was going to be the only way to go. And that legitimate interests was, what did you call it, a cop-out?
A loophole. Right. It's not. I'm not saying it is that.
It's really not a loophole. And in many ways, it's you have to be more responsible with the data that you process in order to be able to process data through legitimate interest. You have to think about whether it's the right way to achieve the objectives that you want. You have to think about the privacy and harms that you do to people that you might be processing the data of and all those sorts of things. So I won't bore you for hours about how to do it right. But legitimate interest always was an acceptable lawful basis to rely on for direct marketing, for direct mail, for outbound telemarketing where people aren't registered on the telephone preference service. So that's absolutely fine for anybody to do. The Dewar Bill that came out last year underlined it. It made direct marketing as specifically stated lawful, legitimate interest as specifically stated lawful basis for direct marketing, which was clarity really. It didn't really change anything, but it should give people the confidence to crack on. The viewpoint amongst government now is much more business friendly than it was around privacy, but it's still important that you manage all of the elements of legitimate interest correctly to make it work. So we do occasionally come across people that struggle with it, but we've got some very robust due diligence processes that we go through on our clients as well before we share data to them, and we can help them with their due diligence on us if they like. We went through a massive audit with the ICO and amongst a bunch of other organisations a couple of years ago. And we came through it with flying colours. So we know that our processes are good. Sorry, I'm just conscious of my DPO listening to what I just said. And we didn't pass it with flying colours. We completed the audit to the ICO's satisfaction. That's the correct way to put it.
Might not be sat on your shoulder in the office, but still likely to hear.
Yeah, exactly. But the good thing is that if you're engaging with people who know what they're talking about in this space, that should give you the confidence that you're data that's useful.
Yeah, and I think that's why 8 Group, we try and in-house as much as we can. We set the strategy with a marketing department of a business across multiple channels. We've in-housed most parts of that process. We do creative, we do digital, we do print and direct mail, obviously, is what we're known for. And I think we've openly and actively not even had a conversation around in-housing data because there's just so much to get your head round. And it only takes one thing to slip through the net and we're in trouble, our customer's in trouble, and you lose all that confidence. And that's why we partner with you guys, because you've done the opposite. Your business, or most of your business, is data. So why would we try and do the bit ourselves that we could use you for when you are the absolute experts? And you don't take all the risks on us as well. But the point is that we've got a strong relationship and we understand the risk on behalf of our clients. And we're transparent about it. I don't sit in front of a client and say we do the data ourselves. That's not how we work. The value we're adding is in the output and also in setting that strategy, analysing the results, making it work harder next time. So I just think it's too risky.
It's an interesting point that you raise about the results analysis as well. I think that's a crucial element to getting any campaign right, because we've already talked about having a hypothesis to start off with. You test the hypothesis, you see what the outcome is, but you don't learn anything unless you really have a proper deep dive into what that outcome really looks like. So it can be something simple, like a campaign can look like it only just struggled to perform well, but certain parts of the country or certain demographics didn't respond well at all and dragged the average down. So it's a lot more in depth than just having a dig into what the response rate was over the whole campaign. And that's before you even start thinking about attribution and different channels affecting each other and all of that kind of stuff.
I was gonna touch on that. I think again, it's a trap that a lot of people fall into, is if they don't work closely with a partner like us, the campaign, again, like we said before, it could wash its face. It could turn a profit. But until you do things like a matchback, who's purchased in the 3 to 4, 5 weeks since that campaign landed, and it's amazing the amount of times you see, we'll do a direct mail campaign, we'll send it out for a client, they do a matchback and realise that actually they've got a huge amount of customers who've gone in store and purchased, or purchased via a link on an email, but they've also received the direct mail piece. Now, I'm guilty of this. I'll receive a direct mail piece. In fact, I did it weeks ago. Did a direct mail piece with an offer, put it in the letter rack, was in store, remembered that I had the direct mail piece, in the queue, went into my emails, found an email with the same offer and a QR code, and then they scan the QR code, I get the discount. Someone somewhere is sat there going, that's because they received the email. So it wasn't. It's because I received the DM piece, which is still at home, but it's not on my person in the store. So if you don't do the right post-analysis on the campaign, like a matchback, I've purchased and I've received the direct mail piece. But what I didn't do is scan the direct mail piece. So there's a whole piece there that I think a lot of people either don't do well enough or don't do at all. They just go, these people received the DM piece, scan the QR code on that piece and purchase. And I think that's such an important part of that journey. And the other thing we haven't touched on, and we're doing this in reverse, I'm very conscious of that, is at the start of selecting that data, one thing that I get very excited about, because I see customers get excited about it, is the data profiling work we do with you guys. It blows my mind every time, and it blows my mind for two reasons. The level of detail you can see on the people listening that don't know what this is. If we get hold of customer data, existing customer data, and work with Graham and his team, we can produce a really smart profile of those people. And it goes into such detail, doesn't it, Graham, of what type of house they own. Do they own their own home? What sort of disposable income do they have? Do they have children? And all of these nuggets of information are so useful. Depending on what you sell or what your product is or your solution, you can really start to pick out areas that you may not have been aware of, or that you are aware of, but the profiling just reinforces that what you thought is correct. It's such an important stage in not just selecting data for a campaign, but selecting what that campaign should be.
Yeah, absolutely. So profiling's been around for a long time. The models have improved. The amount of machine learning and AI that's built into it these days is next level. But the principle is still the same, which is to say that this is what this segment of customers looks like. Here's a bunch of other people that look just the same. They're probably good prospects. That's what it sits on the back of. We have a huge database with almost everybody in it, and it's got anything up to 400 different data items on each of those people. So you're absolutely right. We know about simple things like the classic profiling work, age, income, basic demographics. But we also know about some of their values, what kind of causes they like to support, what sorts of things they think are important. And then other things like the newspapers and media that they engage with, the supermarkets they shop with, all sorts of things like that. And then on top of that, we've got layers and layers of data about what their campaigns have responded to, through which channels, and all of those kind of things. So these rich profile reports are crucial for making sure that you're finding the right audience to send your campaigns to. And yeah, it works really well. So because it's all based on individual level data, so I'm talking about Tom, or I'm talking about Marie, or whoever it is. I'm not talking about the postcode that they live in or the area that they live in. I'm talking about them specifically. And I guess some people might think that feels a bit big brothery, but really all of it's relatively light touch stuff. It's not anything to do with, Tom leaves the house at 8:30 in the morning and walks down his garden. We're not going into that much detail. But we might be able to predict which charities he supports, and we can probably predict he's a runner.
That'll be all the stuff in the background as well, to be fair. And also, you've got to flip it around as well. Look at the end user. Look at us as people that they're targeting. Everyone's time poor now. And the first thing I do in the morning is go on my Gmail account, and most emails have been put automatically into junk or spam.
Yeah.
So you miss those, but we're all time poor. So actually, I don't mind them doing the targeting and knowing that I'm a potential customer, because it means that whatever channel they use, what I do get is likely to be more relevant. There's nothing worse than getting bombarded by multiple channels for a product or a service that you're just not the target audience of. And it goes the opposite. You're like, just leave me alone. I'm not a customer of yours. I never will be. And now you're really annoying me. So actually, I don't mind the fact that they know that the data's out there, right? People know about you. They can build a good picture of you anyway. So why not use it and target people with more relevant content?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've all the data that we use has all been given to us by the individuals themselves. It's not assumed from anywhere else. We've asked them the question and they've told us, which is another element to it. Nobody's that surprised about what's going on. But you hit the nail on the head, really. You've got targeted direct marketing that lands because it's something that you're likely to be interested in. And even if you're not, you can see why you might be, so you can get it. And then the other thing that you said earlier on, you had something that you put in your rack at home, and it stayed there for weeks and preyed on your mind until eventually you did something about it.
Exactly.
And that's the real joy of direct mail. It's got that sort of permanence in your property. I think so. They call it a super touch point because it helps to amplify the performance of all the other channels as well, which is what you were saying earlier on, and where your thoughts on attribution were exactly right. Do a matchback campaign and then recognise that there's been several different touch points that have made this outcome, and direct mail is one of them, and that all the others might not have worked had the direct mail not been in there. And it's going to get more complicated as well, because we know that Google's been hoovering up responses forever because people will see something and then go onto Google and do a search. So last touch attribution can often just tell you spend more money on Google. That's going to start diminishing, or already starting to diminish with AI and AI search functions.
Yep.
So AI is going to be hoovering up everybody's sales, and we've got to realise that there's often many stages before people get onto AI and start asking questions.
And there's now a lot of work around SEO, around optimizing your web page for that. When you probably notice when you type in on Google now, you get an AI summary.
Yep.
There's a lot of work now on SEO on optimizing that. What that means is people aren't even Googling sometimes. They're Googling a phrase, and then it will come up. They're even asking, who would you go to find the best running trainers? And it will come up with what it will look at SEO, and it will use that AI summary. Will say, here's someone you should look at. And then people are typing in that website. So then there's no click attribution. They're literally going direct to the website. So then you really have got to look at your matchbacks. Did they receive a DM piece? Did they receive an email? Is our brand in their head? Is it in their head at the right times? And often enough, without annoying them, that when they need running trainers, it's us that they come to. And I think marketing departments are really having to get their head around that you can do all the analysis in the world, but actually there's also an assumption that they will have seen a billboard and an email and a direct mail piece, and they've ended up purchasing from us. So let's not try and say that this person who looks after our emails did a great job, or this person who looks after our direct mail did the best job. It all comes together, and you're only going to buy when you're ready to buy. So you've just got to be, as a brand, in people's thoughts without annoying them. It's a real balance, and it's where we do a lot of work with customers is exactly that. You've got to get the balance. You've got to have attribution, right? People have got to say that this worked and it paid for itself as an overall campaign. But at the same time, there's got to be an understanding, more from marketing director level, I guess, that we don't need to know exactly which channel worked. They all worked. The person ended up purchasing from us, so it's worked. But again, data is the start and end of that conversation. I'm going to look at one more big question, and then we'll do a bit of a wrap up, because I'm conscious of time and we could both talk forever like we normally do. If a business could improve just one thing about their data approach, what would it be?
Wow, you've hit me with a doozy right at the end there.
Yeah, you've got
If a business could improve one thing about their data approach, I would say that they need to think about the process of using data rather than just managing a campaign and then throwing data in as an afterthought at the end. So I do sound a bit like a glitchy streaming track, but have a hypothesis about what you want to learn and find the data to do it, and then match it up to everything else, get the campaign done, and then the post analytics will tell you the answers, and believe the answers from the post analytics, and not just try and make it fit your own assumptions. So that sort of scientific process is the best, and then taking the results and tweaking what you've done next time to make it work a little bit better.
And that's the beauty of what we do, isn't it, right? Is it's an ongoing conversation. It never ends. You've always got to be marketing. You've always got to be looking at who you're targeting, what worked, what didn't, and like I said earlier, that will change. You can never refine it to the nth degree because the world changes, right? So people respond differently, and people get older, therefore what they like changes. So it's a constantly evolving cycle. So yeah, a bit of a call to action at the end, I guess, is anyone in marketing, data is the most important part of any campaign and ongoing. For a marketing department, data's everything. So.
Well, from my perspective, I'm always told it's the most important part of a campaign when the campaign doesn't perform as the client expected it to.
Works both ways. It does work both ways, but yeah, get in touch if you're not sure that you're doing everything you can with your data. If you're nervous, if you are scared by it, then reach out. If you think you're doing a great job, still reach out. We can have a conversation and look at what you are doing. And I'm not saying we're complete experts, but I'm sure we can add some value in some way, shape, or form right at the start of every campaign and right through to analysis. So yeah, reach out. Thank you, Graham. We've run over, which is always a good sign, I guess. It means we've got lots to talk about.
It's certainly not surprising.
No, it's not at all. No, but no. Thank you for your time and thank you for your input. And I think a lot of people listening to this will get quite a lot out of today.
Well, thank you for inviting me on, and let's carry on working together. That's where all the fun is.
And I'll now leave you to go and work the rest of your day with some death metal in the background. Thanks a lot, Graham.